Being an artist can be a heck of a ride, but you're not alone. On Journey of the Art, we tell inspiring stories of artists and chat with those who support us on this path. I'm your host, Lola Opataya, writer, editor, singer, and all-round lover of words. Come with me on the journey. Hi there, and welcome to Journey of the Art. Thank you so much for listening and watching if you're watching us on YouTube. This is our first episode, and I'm delighted to kick things off with my guest today. My guest is none other than Samuel Kolawole, the author of the forthcoming book, The Road to the Salt Sea, which is going to be released on July 2, 2024. Samuel is a recipient of numerous residencies and fellowships, and he has taught creative writing in Africa, Sweden, and the United States. He earned his PhD in English and creative writing from Georgia State University and currently teaches fiction as an assistant professor of English and African Studies at Pennsylvania State University. Samuel's forthcoming book tells the story of a fugitive on the run and the harrowing encounters he faces as he journeys from Nigeria to Italy through the Sahara Desert. It is a book about dreamers and the harsh reality of many migrants. The novel has been named a finalist at the International Book Awards under the fiction category. You can read more about Samuel on his website. I'll leave links in the show notes or the description box if you're watching this on YouTube. Well, without further ado, welcome to the show, Samuel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is such a full circle moment for the both of us because we've known each other for about 12 years or more. Probably more.
Or more,
Probably,
yeah.
probably more. So let's start at the very beginning. At what point did you know, yeah, I'm a writer. This is what I want to do?
Yeah, thank you very much. I've always made up stories in my head. I remember, while growing up, I would just be my at home then. My father had just completed part of the building where I grew up, and the other part was still uncompleted and wasn't even roofed. And I would just wonder and just make up stories in my head for hours, and that was how I kept myself occupied. I wasn't much. I don't know. I wasn't. I was a quiet boy, so I lived in the world of my imaginations. And then when I became a teenager, I decided I wanted to study medicine. My father wanted me to study medicine. That didn't work out. Father became really, African parent. My father became really angry, and at some point, I, I became really, really depressed, and I fell into this dark place in my life, and I would lock myself up in my room and not leave for days. But because my father was a researcher, retired as a researcher, my mom was also an avid reader. We had books all around. We had books all over the house. So one day I decided to pick up a book on the shelf, and then I kept reading, and that also fed my imagination in a very, very interesting way. And I just kept reading. I read for almost a year nonstop. I read everything. Henry James. I read a lot of Stephen King, Jane Austen, Mark Twain. I read books from the African Writers series. Do you remember the African Writers
Yes,
series?
Eddie Rowe.
From yeah, Chiko Emeka Ike, Hero, and I just kept reading. I just kept reading. I just kept reading. And one day I picked up a pen and decided to write a story. And since then, I've never looked back. That was how it started. So that situation to me was kind of now when I look back, I see it as divine, in that way. Like God trying to, you know, make something good out of something negative. Yeah. So that was how I started writing.
Awesome. So I mean, as you did say that your dad wanted you to be something else and you had started writing. I can imagine that at that point, I mean, every writer usually has a rocky start, and at some point you won't even be able to afford to sustain yourself. So how did you manage that? How did you make money?
I didn't manage. There was nothing. I just kept writing. I kept writing. After a while, I would sleep on a friend's couch. Someone would accommodate me here.
Hmm.
I would go to my mom. You know, get some money for food. So it was rough. It was rough when I first started, but I was convinced that I'd found my calling, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I knew, especially in a place like Nigeria, where writing is not considered as viable. It's not even a serious profession. People don't think it's a serious profession. I remember talking to someone many years ago, and I said to the person, "Oh, I'm a writer." I said, "Oh, then what do you do?"
Wow. Yeah, that has happened to me several times.
Someone also said to me, "Oh, you write books, I write checks." you know, so that was the kind of environment. But I was focused and I was determined, and I knew this was what I wanted to do. So I kept on doing it. I kept on doing it. And I've also been, and we can talk about this later. I've also been a beneficiary of people's benevolence, of the benevolence of organizations, of along the way, scholarships and all of that. But the most important thing for me first was to kind of hone my craft as a writer, because I knew I had to be the best, or I had to be really good. So that was important to me, and I was pretty much focused on that. I also traveled light, in the sense that I didn't have too many desires. I wasn't, I wasn't looking for, I just needed a roof over my head and food.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that even in the midst of how difficult things were, I mean, I have a vague memory of how difficult things were at the beginning, but in the midst of that, you still thought about other writers. So I want to ask you about Writer Studio, which
Mhm.
we worked on together.
Yeah.
I know it was at the very first one. I think it was that in Ibadan or in Lagos? I don't recall now.
No, he was in Ibadan. Then we moved to Lagos after that.
Yes, yes. And then it was almost like, the doors opened up right after that
Yeah.
because you then started to travel afterwards.
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit about Writer Studio? Is it coming back?
Okay, the straight answer is yes, it's coming back. But then I was just, I wanted to connect with people who did the kind of things I did, who were interested in the kind of things I was interested in. I understand. After a while, I began to understand that literary citizenship was very important. That
What is that? What is literary citizenship?
the idea of being part of a community of writers. Even though writing is a solitary pursuit,
Mm,
like I tell my students here, before you can have a book, there must be at least 30 people that have gotten involved. Whether when you think about it, from conception to publication. You can have over 30 people. Readers will be your early readers, your agent, your editor. Then I have an entire team right now of about 5, 6 people who are working with me, publicity, marketing, all of that. So even though writing is a solitary pursuit, is also writing flourishes in communities,
It's for sure.
So I kind of understood that, early on, and at the at the very beginning. So I decided I wanted to do something, create a platform for other writers. And I had no money, as yeah, as you knew. I had no money to do that. So I came up with a plan and I said, okay, if people think this is important, they're willing to pay for it. So that was how we started Writer Studio. I can remember I was supposed to I had saved up some money for my rent that year, and I needed money to start Writer Studio. So I moved to my parents' house again for the second time and use that money to kind of start things and get things going. And it was really successful, really, in my opinion.
The people that came, talked about how, wow, this is actually very helpful. And it wasn't just that well, I say we because we worked together, but it
Yeah.
wasn't just that we made sure that the sessions were actually useful for them, but they ate well. I remember the food and just the care at every point in time.
The food.
Yeah, these people, yeah,
Yeah.
they did pay an amount, but it really couldn't cover the cost of how much we had put into that.
Yeah.
So I think it's very remarkable that in the midst of that pain as an artist, you were
Mhm.
able to look out for other people as well. And that opened the door to other things.
Yeah. In this industry, there's every tendency, especially on the continent in Africa, that you become the only person at the table, and you think that,
So
oh,
true.
the opportunities around you, we don't have enough opportunities, so I'm going to be there. So I've had stories of people, not telling people about opportunities, um, trying to kind of gatekeep, what goes on. But there's space for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. There's space for everyone. Yeah, that is
There's
correct.
space for everyone. And whatever is yours cannot be taken away from you. Um, so that's why, um, and you're also sowing a seed, for the future, which was exactly what happened in my case, because after that things just opened up for me and I started getting opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then you went on to do your master's at Vermont. You went to do your MFA at Vermont.
Yeah, before then I went to South Africa to do my master's, my first master's, which was an expensive program, but was fully paid for by patrons.
Wow. Wow, I
You
didn't
know,
even know that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The person just said, "I love your work. I've been following your work. I'm going to foot your bill," and she did that for 2 years.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's awesome. So you eventually moved from South Africa to the US to do your MFA. Why did you think the MFA was important after you haven't just finished a master's in South Africa?
yeah. Because I wanted to move to the US. I wanted to write and publish in the US, and you know, uh, as an immigrant, the one of the easiest ways, is to go to school, to grad school. So that was an opportunity for me. But I was also looking for a particular kind of MFA or type of MFA program. I didn't want the traditional MFA program for many reasons. I have a lot of so Vermont College of Fine Arts was doing something very very interesting there. It was cross genre, so you didn't just study fiction; you had non-fiction and poetry as well. Publishing was also part of the offering. So yeah, it appealed to me, and I applied, and I was given a full scholarship to come.
And I think that was, at least from what I know of your story, I think that was a turning point. I think it is actually for other people who go to do the MFA in the US from countries like Nigeria, where we're from. But I also know I know that the MFA is as much as it's a big dream for many writers, it isn't always what they expect it to be.
Yeah.
And some people don't, they don't get what they plan for, or it's a huge letdown. So can you talk about what things surprised you when you started your MFA?
Really, nothing surprised me.
Okay.
You know, the problem is people come to MFA programs, with different things, they come different levels of experiences, and in my class, in my cohort, for example, there were people who were, like me, who had published a book before coming, they were more experienced writers, and there were also people who were coming straight from college, from undergrad. And there were people who had like a career before and they were coming back. So it was a mix. It was an interesting mix. The thing I tell people about an MFA is, especially Nigerians, it's just 2 years for you to write a book. And not just write a book, but to have a cohort of people that to kind of read your work and give you feedback.
Yeah.
So if you see it that way, I think a lot of people will be less disappointed and learn. Of course, it also includes learning and kind of improving and honing your craft and all of that. All those things are valid. But that was how I saw it when I came in. I was like, okay, this is, you know, these folks are really giving me 2 years to write my book.
So good.
I ended up writing 2 books, but including the Road to the Salty. This was my MFA thesis, you know. So in my mind, and I was really focused on that. So what happened was that each time they tell us to submit a work for workshop, I would submit something that is going to be part of the big project. Everything was always in the service of the big project to me. I wasn't writing, I wasn't writing anything that I was not going to use, or I did not intend to use. So I think it's about being strategic and not just going to an MFA program and all of that. It's just 2 years for you to write a book and get money and have people around you, because the kind of people you have around you during that time, you might never have those kind of people again. That's the truth. You won't have people who are like interested in reading fiction, who would like want to read and who have time to read. The moment you graduate, no one cares.
Yeah. What can you imagine? Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You're literally on your own.
Yeah. Except you kind of build the relationships with some of your MFA, the members of your cohort, and then those relationships now, you know, those relationships, the people you meet there become your lifelong friends and readers and everything.
Yeah, so I mean, I completely agree with that. And you've talked a lot about wanting to move to the US, and I'm curious. I wonder how much of your immigrant experience influenced your writing. Would you say that it did?
You mean me living in the US? Yeah. I've realized, and I've said this. I was on a panel at AWP, and I talked about this a bit. I think more about home here. There's something about the distance and memory and nostalgia and all those things come to me. And so it makes me think more about the continent. So that is how it has affected me. I've not written an African immigrant story yet. Well, I published a short story recently that is partly set in America, which is like a first for me. I've never done that. I've never been in.
Where's that? or where's that published?
New England Review.
New England Review?
Yeah, you can check it out. It's called something adjustment. Well, just you can
That's what
check
it
it.
called. That's what it's called. Something I
Um,
just met.
Slipping my mind. This is my studio. Just check. Go on my website or check. So it's that story came after so many years of writing stories set in Nigeria and in Africa because I wasn't interested in writing about America in that sense. I'm not sure why I wasn't, but staying here makes me think a lot about home. And there was a time when I was, it felt I was feeling like the well was running dry. In that sense, that spring was running dry, and I needed to reconnect. So I went back home and and went back home.
I think that's really interesting because when you talk about the well drying out, I think that that has been my experience. Because there are times that I think about how much things have changed from when I left to now, and I'm almost like
Yeah.
if I attempt to write, I might be called a fraud because I don't
Mm,
know the reality. So maybe my limitation has been wanting to write what is relevant now, as opposed to maybe what was relevant, what maybe 10 years ago.
mm,
But I think for me, just the fact that the air smells different. In Nigeria, I know what the air smells like. I know if I step out, I'll smell maybe I'll smell grease or I'll smell whatever. Like I know what the air smells like,
mhm,
but here it's so strange. I don't even know what it's supposed to smell like when it rains. And I
mm.
think for me, it's been such a huge difficulty
Yeah.
having that, yeah, connection. And maybe I should go home. Maybe if I go home, the well will spring
Yeah.
back up.
Yeah, exactly. Also, because I'm an immersive writer, that's what I do. I can kind of need to take you in, and so I need to understand. I need to render, kind of the contours of that world.
Yeah,
So, and I remember, I know it's very well. So you were talking, you said something important, very interesting about the fact that you don't want to feel like a fraud.
yeah,
I think you being Nigeria makes you not a fraud. you know, because you're in Nigeria.
that is
Like
true.
you're an African. That is who
That is
you are.
true.
No, that cannot be taken away from you. Uh, so but because I am very I'm very similitude is very important to me. So art imitating life. I want to be right. Well, I want to be real, not right, real.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I started, when the memory started fading, I was like, okay, I need to go back. And I went back and I just needed a few days and I was okay.
Okay, so let's talk about the book, The Road to the Salt Sea.
Yeah, I have the finished copy here.
Yeah, I have the finished
Just,
copy. I have the finished copy. The one I have is the finished copy. It's such an excellent book.
thank you.
And as you were speaking about you going home, it all made sense to me. Like, okay, yeah, this is why it feels so authentic. And I think, and maybe that's what I'm talking about when I say I don't want to be a fraud. It's like I want to be as authentic as possible. And that authenticity really comes out in the book. It's such an excellent book.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the characters. First, let's talk about the
Hmm.
name Able God. Like when I posted this on my Instagram, I was like, when you know the main character is called Able God, you know it's going to be a good one. And it really is a good book.
I saw that. I saw that coming. I saw that coming.
I guess I mean, there's Able God, there's Ben 10, there's Morufu. Like these are really, well, apart from Morufu, these are outlandish names. And I wonder if you did that deliberately. Did you do that deliberately?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And there's nothing deep, behind it. Really.
Because I see a deep connection. Like Abel God, the way he just navigates all of that. I feel like, you know how in Yoruba land we say that Oruko Yoroyo, like your name speaks for
Yeah.
you. So I feel like at the end of the day, Abel God's name actually does sort of speak for him.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I made those connections in my mind and I was conscious of all those things. But I'm also interested in, I like it when my characters pop out, and part of that is what I name my characters. There are times when I kind of feel I feel characters are, have all these regular names and I'm like, okay, okay.
Let's rock the
Okay,
boat.
fine. Yeah. So what? So it's kind of my thing, you know. The novel I'm working on now, the protagonist. So don't let me say that,
You can tell us, you can
So
tell us, you can tell us.
no. So yeah, exactly. So I just like giving them it was this Igoni Barrett that I learned that from. Igoni Barrett, the Nigerian writer, also likes giving names, very very unusual names to his characters, and I was just that this is really it for me because it pops. These characters are unique,
For sure.
their names set them apart, and they leap off the page in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, yeah. And so I was saying to you before, I don't know if that was before I hit record. I was talking about how well researched this book is, how thoroughly researched it is. And there's a remarkable description of several events and places that, without going into too many details, it makes you feel as though you were there. Like you went, like maybe did you at some point, I was thinking, did he actually take a trip just like to see what it looks like? Because really, it's really that well researched. So can you talk a little bit about the amount of time and what did you do to get that research through?
Yeah. It was Neil Austin that calls research formalized curiosity. Formalized curiosity. And I've given lectures on this before, and they are, you know, you can write what you know, but you can also write what you want to know. And so those two things. In fact, I believe you should both
So
write
good.
what you know and what you want to know. So so I knew I was going to I wanted an authentic kind of representation of this situation. So I knew what I needed to do. I also knew that I wasn't going to travel through the Sahara.
Obviously.
So, so, so I read a lot of materials. And because I am an immersive writer, like I said, I had to watch videos. So even before I started writing, I consumed a lot of materials, read articles, read books. There wasn't a lot of literature. In fact, I didn't find any novel that you know kind of explore this this subject. But but I read a lot. I did a lot of research, articles. There was a book I read that was very helpful, and then I watched videos.
So when you say videos, you're talking about YouTube videos about people who've actually been through this experience?
Yeah, YouTube videos. Yeah, yeah, hours and hours of YouTube videos. I just sat down and just kind of immersed myself. I because I needed to see, to feel it and see it in in my mind's eye. So so I needed that. I needed the deposits were very very important. So after a while, I felt I knew that I felt I was
You don't even have to get on
to
the
get
page.
to get there, and I filled in the rest. So, but it was a lot of research
Yeah, it is. It is.
because I wanted to get it right. It's an important story.
And I think you got it right. I mean, some others may argue, but I think you got it right. How long did it take you to do all of this research? Do you have a vague figure in mind? About a year?
About a year. And there was at some point I was also, as I was writing, I was researching as well. And, um, the drafts. I did a couple of drafts. I was trying to work out the structure of the novel, and each time I would, you know, I would do more research and say, oh, this aspect is very interesting. I want to kind of portray this aspect. So that was how it worked.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also noticed that you pulled a little bit from your story, Sweet Sweet Strawberry Taste.
Yeah.
I think that's the name. And I will leave the link to that story in the description or the show notes. Was that a type of experiment to see if the story could work?
No, actually, the novel is actually an expansion of Sweet Sweet Strawberry
Ah, I
Taste.
see.
So because when I published Sweet Sweet Strawberry Taste in, I think, 2019 or so, it got a lot of attention. And I mean, I write short stories. That's my first love, and I love writing and publishing short stories. So when I wrote this short story, I was like, okay, there are times when you write a short story and people will read it and will love it. But this one was different in the sense that it really struck a nerve. There was something about it. People started talking about it online, and I was like, there's something about this.
Yeah.
So let's see if I can expand this. So if you notice, but it was interesting because Sweet Sweet Strawberry Taste. I wrote it in first person plural.
It's true.
Yeah. So the question was, was I going to continue in first person plural? That is some difficult to sustain in fiction, in a novel, in a full length novel. So I decided, okay, why not have a protagonist and take out a character and then add other characters to it and all of that, and kind of expand the plot, expand. So it was so it grew out of that short story. The novel grew out of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it worked pretty well. It worked out pretty well, actually. So let's talk about the thematic preoccupation of this novel.
Yeah.
There's so many things to pull out from it. Well, the first thing that came to my mind as I was reading it was there's a huge role of religion. There's a huge focus on religion. And even as they go on this horrendous journey, the characters are constantly praying. They're praying as they're, I don't want to give out too many details, but there's a huge influence of religion and how it shapes these characters. It shapes even Abel God's life. The kind of relationship he has with his parents, with his brother, it's all based on this prophecy by this barefooted prophet. And the way his life moves on from point to point, it's almost like religion does really play a huge role, and he comes to that understanding at some point in the book. So I wanted to ask you, what were you thinking, or to what extent do you think religion plays a role in the life of a person?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially in the African society.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and this, like I said, just art imitating life. Religion is very vital in the African society, and is a two-edged sword in that sense. On one hand, faith, there's a way faith preserves us, helps us go through hard times. But on the other hand, there's also the flip side of it, and how we people constantly use religion as a cordial.
that's true.
Sometimes people use religion as a crutch. So you have all the complexity of it.
Yeah,
Of it.
absolutely.
Although I like to separate faith from religion though, but religion is very pervasive in the African society. So, and forms shapes how people think.
Yes.
In this story, religion is becomes important in Able God's life because it's part of what makes him keep going. It's part of what kind of gives him hope to keep going on the journey, even though his idea, his relationship with Christianity is also complicated in certain ways, and there are characters in the story too who use religion to swindle. Well, we
Yeah.
use religion to as a mask, you know, for nefarious activities and all of that. So is this kind of complicated? I wanted to present a very, very authentic and complicated, um, you know, representation of religion on the page.
And I think it's interesting that you mentioned religion versus faith, because when we see any type of manipulation or exploitation, it's almost like it's on the religion side of things. When we see the characters genuinely call out for help, then we see the faith side of things. Like
Yeah,
at that point where Abel God goes into this burned down church and kneels to pray at a point where it's like, I'm about to take a very huge leap
yeah,
on this journey and just be with me. So see me through. So I think that's a good way to look at it
yeah,
actually, like religion versus faith. But I thought that it stood out very strongly to me and it cut across a lot of characters, like even people who are non-Christians. So I think that was really well presented in the book. Now let's talk about classism. There seems to me to be a dichotomy between the rich and the poor in this novel. On the one hand, we have Dr. Badero, who is the foundation of this whole mess that Abel God finds himself in. There is
is
Londana.
he
He's such a
okay?
huge part of it, really huge part of it. There's Dr. Badero, there's Londana, there's Serge, and then on the other hand, we have Abel God, we have Morufu, we have Gaddafi, we have Akudo and others. And it seems to me that the rich needs the poor to feel a sense of accomplishment, even in the way they show any type of benevolence. And the
Yeah,
poor, on the other hand, need the rich to survive their miserable existence. It's like it's almost like you constantly present this dichotomy to us at every point in the story.
mhm.
Can you walk me through your thought process as you presented this in the book?
Yeah. But my stories, if you're familiar with my stories and my work, and the class, is one of the things I explore in my works, and in this novel, it's about the breakdown of the class system. It's about the powerful versus the powerless, the rich versus the poor,
Yeah,
and those who are also aspiring to be rich, and how they are aspiring to be rich, and what they are trying to do to do that. The entire the trans-Saharan migrant crisis in itself is a global inequality crisis, because you have to go back to why you have this exodus of people out of the country in the first place. And if you trace that back, you realize that these are some of their post-colonial issues responsible for those things.
that's true.
And of course the modern crisis of the class disparity that we have in
Yeah.
our society, and also it's also plain for all of us to see. A place like Lagos where you can have a slum beside a skyscraper, and people would take choppers and over slums to their offices in in Lekki and
Yeah.
Banana Island.
It's so ridiculous.
So so it's also addressing all these things that we see as Nigerians and as Africans, and to let us know that we still have work to do,
For sure.
and there's still a lot that we can do to lift people from poverty. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's very interesting that you talk about what the foundation of this is. And I was going to ask you about it because also in the book, it seems to me to be a theme of a breakdown of trust.
Mm.
And I think that is really the foundation of everything. The people that you trust to take care of people don't. And nothing appears to be what it seems. And so I see this very strongly in that part of the book where you narrate the shelter and how the manager of the shelter is using it for other reasons. I won't go into too many details, but it's almost like a representation to me, I think, of some countries where the government is supposed to be responsible to take care of certain things, and those things aren't done.
Yeah.
And because those things aren't done, it almost leaves the people vulnerable to different vices and different elements. I think it's very interesting that, and we see this in the book because that trust is being constantly eroded. Things get worse. Every time Abel God gets into a horrible situation,
Yeah.
it's because someone hasn't done what they were supposed to do. And that trust has been broken and things get progressively worse. So let's move on then from that to what I have summarized as the abandonment of responsibility.
Mm.
Because I think those two things are related and there seems to be there is not that there seems to be, but there is an abandonment of responsibility by Ben 10, by Abel God, and the manager of the shelter. Abel God, is in this situation because he abandoned his responsibility at the desk to go up
Well,
and do whatever. I think
well,
that Abel God could have gone with a security person and his life would have been significantly better. But
yeah, he was trying to
he
sneak.
went there because he had other
Yes,
motives.
motives. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that theme of abandonment of responsibility also shines through in the book. And in all instances, this abandonment of reality leads to the next disaster. Yeah, yeah. So can you talk a little bit about this? Do you think we're sometimes forced to abandon responsibility, or do you think we make these decisions willfully?
Yeah, I see. This is how I see it. Whenever there's a problem in our society, we always blame the government, right? And to a large extent, that's true. But the idea that each of us, have we all have that responsibility
Absolutely.
to, and the society is not just the society. The people you know this make the society in that sense.
Yeah.
So instead of you complaining of someone who is doing something up there in Abuja, think of what you are doing in your office. That's kind of that level of accountability. So I thought about that a lot, and then how your actions also creates this ripple effect. The action of someone, and how we are all connected. Really, people say that a lot, and it seems cliche, but we are all connected in that sense. As members of communities, as members of the society, there's something that connects us. So if something happens here, it will affect this person, this situation, and that is one of the things I wanted to show in the novel in that sense. And there are also sometimes when we are forced to make decisions based on the circumstances we find ourselves and how complex that is. Because I wasn't interested in making Abel God a terrible person, but I was also not interested in making him a good person. you know, the kind of moral quandary, the moral dilemma that you sometimes find yourself when you are faced with either a life-threatening situation
Yeah.
or a situation that requires survival. So, so
Yeah, I think I completely agree. The government can't always be blamed because when, like you said, when we look into our individual lives, there are places where we can take action. And that is I think, the sad part of this story. It's seeing how able God transforms. Like at the beginning, he's, this guy who, we see a bit of that, I'm going to say spunk, when he goes to logging at work and the security guy is trying to get him to be subservient and he's like, yeah, I'm not leaning into that. But we see a little bit of that at the beginning. But at the end, he's so different. He's changed because his life is, it's been tossed and turned.
yeah,
Yeah, based on the decisions of others. But he gets to a point where he makes a decision, and that decision then changes the trajectory of his life. And then he looks at that mirror. There's a point in the book where he looks at the mirror and he doesn't even know what manner of man he is anymore. So I agree. I
yeah,
agree.
yeah. Is that kind of relationship between personal responsibility and choice and all of that, and fate? You know.
Yeah.
So what at what point, what is destiny? What's the definition of destiny? Can your actions influence your outcomes, or it doesn't matter what you do? So all those things, I try to grapple with those things, because you can say, oh, able God, unfortunate circumstances, but he also did some things.
Yes, he did. Which we're not going to say. We're not going to say what he did because we don't want to spoil it for those who have not read the book.
Yes, yes. So that.
Yeah, and I think it's at the end of the day, it also, it's sometimes it's about identity. And I'm going to tie that to what I'm calling the theme of identity in the book. Abel God's life is strongly impacted by or was strongly influenced by the relationship he has in his family unit. That's his immediate family, right? Like his mother already thinks, one person is going to do better than the other person. His father, deals with him with a heavy hand. And he's constantly trying to be something that he's not. Constantly, like even in his meeting Morufu, and then Morufu taking him to meet I'm calling them the abandoned building
Mhm.
boys. He makes decisions just to please people, just to be this other person. And I think that's why he connects very strongly with Akudo and her double life, because he himself is not the one person, he has different sides of himself, and
Yeah.
he struggles to find his identity. And I think that it's on this journey to Europe that he really discovers what manner of man he is.
Mhm.
It's almost as if he's always searching, but he never quite lays hold on the things that he desires. And so that's where I think that question of, is this a decision of that is being made for me, or am I making this decision? I think it's a part of the book that really stood out to me as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's able God is definitely has like a crisis of identity, um, and the story is about him trying grappling with that. You know, where exactly is able God? Is he a? I don't want to spoil it
No,
now.
don't spoil it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And I think also because he tries to figure out who he is when he comes to these hard points, he escapes. And that's another huge theme in the book. It's this theme of escape. And he isn't the only one who's escaping, others are escaping as well. Like the abandoned building boys, who
Yeah.
smoke joints to escape their miserable lives. And you know how Abel God is constantly leaning to his early memories
Mhm.
when he's on this perilous journey. And even when he's not doing that, he's constantly thinking about, how he's going to how am I going to escape the situation I
Yeah.
find myself in? And we also see people like Magodi, and I hope I'm saying that right, Tesfaye, Abshir, these guys who have escaped harsh realities and brutality really from their countries. When I think about this, I think about, when people say immigrants should never have left their countries in the first place, and I think
Mhm.
about this idea of escape and how escape is in fact not a luxury. It's in fact, I think those who don't appreciate escape are privileged because you don't know what it's like to need to escape. And
Yeah.
I thought to myself that I was going to ask, is this what you were thinking as you were writing the book?
Yeah, absolutely. Remember the epigraph by Washanshai, home, you know, the mouth of the shark, and no one leaves home except unless home is the mouth of the shark. It is also escapism is also a form of survival
Yeah,
because you are trying to get out of the harsh realities of your present existence, and you you are trying to get out of it momentarily, so or or permanently, or however you are trying to get out of it, because you want to preserve your sanity, you want to preserve your peace of mind, and in some cases you want to
that's true.
preserve your actual life.
Absolutely.
So it's also a way of is a coping mechanism, uh, and it, if you grow up in Africa, you would realize that you need coping mechanisms.
True.
So you know, also escapism also tells us that there is somewhere better than what's currently up that what where we currently are, and there's a better life, a better situation. It's also about dreams, you know. It's also about dreams. So you are trying to say, even though I'm trying to get out of this my current reality, I also aspire, you know. So it's also about dreams. So the book is also about dreams, and you can say that, for example, we always there was a time I used to think, oh, you know, so I have an article coming out. Lit Hub is publishing an essay of mine very soon, and in that essay, I grappled with something happened to me in the United States, and what and it was a really unpleasant experience. And one of the things that came to my mind is that, you know, I'm an I'm an expatriate. I'm not one of those asylum seekers or people, coming into the country from the southern border or crossing the Sahara. And after a while, I challenged that notion, that idea, and I was like, what makes you different from them? Maybe circumstances, maybe time, maybe opportunities, but you have, dreams of a better life. They also have dreams of better life.
That's true.
So you understand? Yeah, yeah.
That's true. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because sorry, you go ahead.
Go on, go on.
Okay, I was just going to say that it's
No.
interesting that you mentioned dreams because that again is a huge theme in the book. It's deferred hopes and failed dreams. And it's very sad. The book is rife with several instances of failed dreams.
Yeah.
And that is what, actually sets the main characters on a journey in search of a better life, as you say.
Mhm.
And as an immigrant and a writer, I can relate to these travelers. Just like you say, what makes you any different? They're either running away from something or they're in search of a place where their dreams, come to fruition. And I was going to ask you if you could relate to it as well, and
Oh yeah.
how. Yeah. And how did an understanding of this idea of failed dreams help you to tell this deeply moving story. And you were just talking about that.
Yeah, dreams, dreams make us come alive, they make as human beings, I do not believe that you have started living until you started dreaming. You begin to dream. So and that's important in itself, because there are times when you dream and nothing happens, but then you can dream again. So and I've had instances in my life when I've had you know dreams that did not come. There are things that I looked forward to that did not come to pass. So I understand that, at, just at the, human level, I understand that. And the characters in this novel too, they're also struggling with that. It's very human. And in their case, some of them were sold. They were sold a dream. And there were some that created dreams, for themselves,
Yeah.
you know. But it's a book about dreams and failed dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was going to quote a portion of the book. I have the um, uncorrected proof, but it says traveling, and it says traveling to Europe is very easy, although there are certain risks. Everything in life is a risk. Even common eating is a risk. You can take in food through your mouth and have it end up in your windpipe. But this is the crux of it all, I think. There can be no success without risking something. When I read that part, I underlined it because I was like, yes, absolutely, yes. Everything in life is a risk. Everything in life is a risk, and I think that understanding really underscores a lot of what happens in the book. Even for myself personally, I think about that. Like everything is a risk, and it's almost like the bridge between your dreams and the actualization is the bridge of risk,
Yeah.
right?
Also, Ben 10 is a very, very fraudulent. Of course, there's a reason why Ben 10 is kind of preaching that, saying that to the boys, because he wants them to, because he knows what is ahead.
Yeah.
So he wants them to be able to go far enough
Yes.
for him to be able to achieve his own goal. So there's also deception in that.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think at the end of the day, we we all have to, like I was saying to someone recently, we all have to weigh the risks and take calculated risks. Like, okay, this is the risk I want to go on, but is it actually worth it? And maybe that's where our characters, make this huge mistake, that they don't calculate the risks properly.
Yeah.
Or they think that this risk is the only option they have. And maybe that's another angle to it. Like, is this the only option I have?
Yeah. So the way those characters are, they feel that if that's actually the best thing, if when you have, presented with an opportunity that makes you feel that this is the best thing that has happened to
Yeah.
in like forever, you're going to take it. So life has kind of prepared them for that moment. The disappointments of life, the the abandonment of so many people and everything has kind of prepared them, primed them for that moment. So now, so it's easy for Ben 10 to, in Yoruba, we say Togiri Obalanu, Alangba.
Alangawili Wokiri.
How do we translate that? For
If there's no crack in the wall, the lizard cannot get into it.
Lisa, yeah. So it's kind of what is going on with with the boys in the novel, and yeah, so it's but I totally agree with you about taking risk and all of that. It's part of life. Sometimes you just have to jump, which is what I really did in my career. When I first started, you know, there were times when I started things that I didn't know how they were going to end. If they were going to end, if I was going to have enough money, if I was going to have enough the strength required for it. There were things that I did that I was like, okay, I'm just you know moving forward by faith and just so.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you respond that way because this now then leads me to symbolism in the book.
Mm.
And there's a huge symbol in the book, and it's the symbol of chess.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems to me that Abel God and the travelers are really just pawns.
Mm.
And these circumstances just move them, and they have no, it's almost as if they have no control, over their lives because they're really just pawns.
Mm.
Yeah, and I don't play chess, but it does
Do.
seem to me that these people, there's an element of out of controlness, right? It's almost like the path has been predetermined, and they're going to end up where they all end up.
Mm. But is chess is also, I understand, yeah, and I agree with you, but chess is also about strategy.
That's right. It's about strategy.
It's also about making moves to get a required outcome. So in the novel, you see Ebugo thinking about the strategies of chess and how drawing lessons from the strategies of chess, and the same thing with life. So again, back to the kind of that the relationship, the struggle between faith and responsibility. Faith, religion, faith. When I say faith, FATE, destiny, destiny, and
Yeah.
responsibility. And responsibility, and strategy, and action, and choices, and all of that.
Yeah.
So those two things are things that I try to grapple with in this novel.
Yeah, and you did it. You captured this story so well, and it's such a good read. It will
Yeah,
stay. The story will stay with me for quite a while.
thank you.
So your
Yeah,
book
I hope you
is
stay
coming
with
out.
readers.
Say that again.
I hope the book stays with readers for a while. Yeah.
I think it will. I think it will. I think it will bring up a lot of empathy because that's one of the things I came away with.
Yeah.
I could relate to the story because I'm an immigrant,
Yeah.
and even though I didn't go through the Sahara Desert, I understand what it took for me to come to Canada where I live today.
Mm.
I really hope that it inspires a lot of empathy for people who pack up everything or pack up nothing, depending on their situation, to find themselves in places that they never imagined they would be. So your book is coming out on July 2, which is not too long from now.
Yes.
What are some things you're looking forward to?
Well, I have a big tour in the US. I'm looking forward to that. Just to meet readers, talk to readers. It's always that aspect is I've done the hard work, so it's the fun part now. you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do you think it's going to be a fun part though? Because I know some writers, at least almost all the writers I know, are introverted by nature. Do you think you're gonna have fun?
Yeah. Yes, I'm also introverted, but I also like talking to readers and talking about my work and everything. And it's traveling to those places won't be fun because traveling
Absolutely.
is kind of hard. but but the idea, is I also see it as a privilege that people get to read your what you have written in the first place. So it's a privilege. So if I have the privilege, if people gather, it's even better. And we talk about my work, my writing. It's really a privilege. That's how I see it. So so I look forward to that. It's gonna be a busy year for me.
Yes, I mean, I imagine you hopefully will come to Canada. I know you're going to be all around the US, but hopefully
Yes.
you come to Canada. And hopefully we get to meet in person after so long and you can send my copy
Yes.
because I bought a copy. I know you gave me one, but I bought a copy. You
Okay.
should know that.
Okay. I will sign it.
Thank you so much for chatting with me
Thank you. Thank you so much.
today. I'm going to leave all the links to your book and your social handles in the show notes and the description
Thank
box
you very much.
for those who are watching on YouTube. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the very best with your book.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
On the next episode, I'll be chatting with another inspiring artist. But before then, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what you think about this show and this episode. Feel free to drop me a note here or send me a DM on Instagram at Journey of the Art Pod. Finally, please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, or follow and rate the show if you're listening elsewhere. Help me connect with other artists who need a dose of inspiration today. Until next time, stay on the journey of your art.